England, but as we come back into Scotland, it is a cold and frosty start to the day here, but you'll be greeted with plenty of sparkling sunny skies. And then through the course of the day on Thursday, it's more of the same. For many of us, the sunshine prevails through the course of the day. That sunshine a little bit hazier out towards the west with just some high cirrus cloud filtering across the skies. And into the afternoon, we may just see one or two clouds bubbling up to give one or two very light showers, maybe just north of London. But temperature-wise, it's a warm day across the UK. Highs of 20 degrees, that's 68 Fahrenheit there in London, but mid-teens to high teens widely elsewhere. Through Thursday evening then, most of that cloud that develops will melt away. So once again, it's a dry and a clear night. A bit more of a breeze developing down towards the southwest. And there are some signs of a change as we head towards the weekend. A few more in the way of showers and temperatures still on the fairly mild side. Goodbye.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you the chance to splash out this season with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash. Jet off on your dream holiday, treat yourself to something special, or just save it for a rainy day. You'll also receive 2 brand new designer watches and a Mulberry handbag, so you can really look the part this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, like yourself, I'm an Oldham boy, so I remember as a kid the holidays in Blackpool were just incredible. And I think, what we did with this survey was trying to understand where people said they wanted to go, but I think the key bit was why. So we wanted to understand what was important about the UK holiday, and also just understand a little bit about, attitudes to travelling abroad and the UK. And I think, for me, 61% of people said the reason they need a holiday is family time. So for me, to be honest, whether that's in Cornwall, whether it's Essex, Lancashire, it doesn't matter. What really matters is that time together, isn't it, with your family, your loved ones, that I think we all need more and more in a nutty world in which we live at the moment. So, yeah, it's what you're doing on holiday as well as where you're going.
Andy, how can we find a good deal out of this? What are some tips and tricks for keeping the spending under control if you're looking for especially if you're going to Cornwall, for example? I'd imagine if you're looking in July or August, it's going to be pretty expensive, right?
My advice would be, research really carefully where you want to go. Think about what the location can offer, and we've got a range of holiday parks. What the holiday park can offer to you. And just try and plan early. I think it just takes that pressure away from later on. Everyone's on a degree of budget these days. But again, I think it's that time together that people will be willing to pay for.
Of course, part of the research as well, Andy, was to do with the economy. 62% of people you asked said that Brits feel we should be going on staycations in order to support our economy. Just how important is that? Yeah,
I think it's really important. It's, the British tourism economy is worth many billions per annum, employs, hundreds of thousands of people in tourism.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is Wednesday, the 19th of March.
It is indeed.
Now, my name's Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
And Nicholas Prosper, the 19-year-old who wanted to go down as the most famous killer in history, has been told he will spend at least 48 years in prison for murdering his mother and siblings.
Yes, this is the breaking news today. Chillingly, the Luton teenager had also planned to carry out a massacre at his old primary school, fantasising about shooting a classroom of 30 children aged 4 and 5 alongside their teachers.
Well, let's go straight to Luton Crown Court now and speak to our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, this news just breaking now, an absolutely sensational and, frankly, terrifying story.
Well, indeed, the judge, Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb, has just passed that sentence, a minimum tariff of 49 years in prison. So 49 years before he is even eligible to be considered for parole. He has time served, of course, having been arrested earlier last year. So with that time off, it will be just over 48 years in prison. But that's before he will even be considered and will have to be assessed before he is eventually released. But clearly, the judge had taken into consideration whether in this case, with 3 victims, his mother and 2 of his siblings murdered by him, whether this justified a whole life tariff. But taking all of the factors, she said, into consideration, including the fact that he was suffering from autism spectrum disorder, that she felt that a whole life tariff was not justified in this instance, and that's why she has come up with that minimum tariff of 49 years in jail. Now, this case happened on the 13th of September last year, the horrific murders of Nicholas Prosper's mother, Juliana, his 13-year-old sister, Giselle, and 16-year-old brother, Tyler, at the block of flats they lived in Luton. This was to be the prelude for a much greater tragedy, a disaster for Luton, according to the judge, because it was Nicholas Prosper's plan to go armed with the shotgun that he'd used to kill those family members to his former primary school, St Joseph's Catholic Primary School in Luton, and specifically he was going to target those very young children in the early years cohort at this particular primary school. And he had a target in mind, according to prosecutors. He was planning to kill 30 children aged between 4 and 5, as well as 2 teachers, and including, of course, the murder of his family members. That would take the death toll under him to 35. And the reason he wanted to do this, according to the prosecution laying out his case, is because he wanted the notoriety of being the worst mass murderer in recent times. He had researched and modelled himself on the Sandy Hook school shootings in the United States, Columbine and Virginia Tech as well. These school massacres that still ring for most people, you know, the horrific tragedy that occurred in these school shootings. He had wanted to emulate those mass murderers and actually to outdo them, but fate got in the way on that day, the 13th of September last year, when he looked to shoot dead those family members. He wanted to kill them in their sleep, but somehow his mother either was awoken somehow and managed to get an indication of what was going on. There was then a very violent struggle in the house that lasted some time, where the mother and then the 2 siblings were running from this young man who was chasing them around the flat with a shotgun. The mother was shot first. She was shot in the head and fatally wounded. Then 13-year-old Giselle, who was shot first of all in the back of the head from some distance. That grazed her. She ran into the living room, we're told, and tried to hide under a table. At that point, Nicholas Prosper caught up with her and then shot her through the head, sustaining, of course, fatal injuries as well. Then the 16-year-old brother was woken by all of the commotion, the sound of the shotguns. Tyler had run to the kitchen to try to hide from his brother, but he was pursued in there. He was shot in the chest, and then he was stabbed and slashed, according to the prosecutor, more than 100 times, pleading with his brother throughout to stop and to save him and not to kill him. But at one point, Tyler rose to his feet, we're told managed to escape into the hallway, but then was again shot by Nicholas Prosper in the head and fatally wounded. So, of course, in themselves, that the murders of those 3 family members were absolutely horrific in nature and would have, without a doubt, for someone aged over 21, probably have carried a whole life tariff. But when someone is under 20 years of age, there is a special threshold that has to be crossed in a crime before a whole life tariff can be passed. If that had been passed in this case, he would have been the youngest person ever to receive a whole life tariff. The judge, clearly in her calculations, felt that as horrific as the crimes were in terms of the murder of those family members and the plan to carry it out an even more hideous crime in terms of this school massacre, still didn't cross that threshold into a whole life tariff. We should say that the plans to carry out the school massacre were thwarted by the fact that those family members had awoken and this violent fight had ensued in the flat, because with firing off the shotgun in the way that he did, with all the screams and shouts, neighbours then called the police. He was forced to flee the house at about 5:30 in the morning before the police arrived, and there was just so many police around Luton searching for him. He knew that the chances of him actually getting to a school that wasn't on lockdown to carry out his massacre had disappeared, so he handed himself over to the police. In fact, I think we might have a video clip of the moment that Nicholas Prosper was arrested by those Bedfordshire police officers in Luton.
You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention, when questioned, something today's trial in court. Anything you do say may be given as evidence. What road are we on? Birmingham Road. 426 priority. Birmingham Road, I think we've got the offender.
It's not murder.
Yes, we've got a male here. He's presented himself to us. Can we just get another unit down here, please?
Well, the judge has said in this case that Nicholas Prosper showed absolutely no remorse for his crimes. In fact, he seemed to take pride on occasions in what he had done, the harm that he had inflicted on those family members, and what he was planning, of course, to do at that school, St Joseph's Primary School here in Luton, as well as being diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum by a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist also noted that there were some traits to his personality that could not be explained by autism spectrum disorder, and that actually his extreme lack of remorse and empathy were explained with traits that were more akin to psychopathy, to psychopathic traits.
So, Mark, just to clarify, was autism a mitigating factor in this sentencing, or not really?
Well, to an extent, but when it's a crime as horrific as this, it is only degrees. So there was a mitigating factor in the autism spectrum disorder, which clearly meant that this was an individual who had very significant, well, not very significant, but significant developmental issues. He was someone that was antisocial, that hid himself away in the bedroom for much of the time. He had a fascination with video games, gory, horrific video games. He had an obsession as well with paedophilia. According to the prosecutors, he had some 200 indecent images of children, including 19 of the most serious images involving the sexual rape of children as well. So a very troubled, disturbed young man who, as I say, the judge said in their sentencing remarks, had shown absolutely no remorse for the crimes that he committed. Well, now he is heading off to prison to begin that 49-year jail term, less the time, of course, he has already served. And just, you know, we say 49 years, that is only the time then that he is eligible for parole. It does not mean that those assessing him at that time in the future will decide to release him.
Well, Mark White, thank you so much for that extraordinary report. Seeing those images are really, really chilling. And, of course, we'll be catching up with you, Mark, later in the programme. Just the most extraordinary
Goodness me, what do you make of that? I mean, that additional detail that he had an obsession with paedophilia as well. Was he seeking some kind of sexual gratification from massacring those children, if that had gone to plan, if there's 30 children?
4 and 5-year-olds.
I mean, disgusting, isn't it? And the use of autism, we see this a lot as a mitigating factor in sentencing. It seems that the judge deemed that this Nicholas Prosper had it was a psychopath, essentially, a sociopath. But we do see it a lot, and it's deeply offensive to people who are living with autism and to their families and friends.
I think a lot of people...
They don't fantasise about massacring children.
A lot of people will be questioning why on earth is there not a whole life order?
Well,
if there's zero remorse for this person who already committed a mass killing, was planning an even bigger mass killing, I mean, why on earth is this person not going behind bars for the rest of his life?
Killing his mum, his brother, his sister, planning the massacre of 30 children and 2 teachers. I mean, it's quite incredible, isn't it?
Really shocking story. We'll have more on that, of course, later in the programme. But we're going to return to politics now because the Prime Minister is defending his party's economic record.
Yes, he is, trying to. Speaking at PMQs, Keir Starmer faced quite a bit of pressure from Kemi Badenoch on the economy.
Speaker, the Chancellor claimed that her budget was a once-in-a-parliament reset. Yeah. So why are we having an emergency budget next week?
Mr. Speaker, we have delivered record investment into this country, had 3 interest rates cut in a row, and wages are going up faster than prices, which is a massive cost of living boost. That's after only 8 months, after 14 years of absolute failure. What do they do? Interest rates 11%, massive 22 million black hole in the economy. They crashed the economy. We're rebuilding Britain.
Difficult argument, isn't it, when the OECD have just downgraded our growth prospects?
Also, I think the Prime Minister meant inflation when he said interest rates then. Interest rates didn't get up to 11%. But shall we...
Oh dear, not an economist, our Prime Minister.
Let's dissect this with our political editor, Christopher Hope. You were there in the press gallery, looking down on there. An assured performance from Kemi Badenoch.
I thought so. She built an argument. She's talking about next week's update from the OBR, of course. Is that a budget or not? Now, people like Ed Balls say if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So what the Tories are looking at, just trying to reframe what happens next week. If they don't increase those income tax thresholds, it means that tens of thousands more people are dragged into those higher rates of income tax because of inflation. Normally the PM faces the Tories, and that's his big battle, but unusually this time he's got problems coming in from behind him from the left of the Labour Party. We saw Diane Abbott there, the mother of the house. She says there's nothing moral about cutting benefits and balancing the books of the Treasury on the backs of the poor. Colm Eastwood, he's an SDLP, aligned with Labour but not a Labour MP. He said, why are you cutting PIP is what the last government did, and that prompted Richard Bergen on Twitter to promise a mother of all rebellions unless you change tax. I think that's going forward. It'll be a problem here for this Prime Minister, both from the Tories, obviously the opposition party, but also on his own backbenches.
Really hard for the government to say that they have steadied the ship, that they have reset and sort of done their once-in-a-parliament budget, when they're going to have to do, as Ed Balls says, an emergency budget.
Well, at the beginning of next month, there's an enormous amount of increases in cost of living. There's going to be costs across the board. I've got a list somewhere, but TV licence, we've got the fiscal drag, about 9 or 10
council
or so.
Tax.
Council tax, thank you for reminding me. Lots of areas there, which I think they know this is a very difficult few weeks here for this government, and next week it starts.
Yeah, and it can't squeeze taxpayers even more, although perhaps they will try. I don't believe the Prime Minister ruled that out.
Black hole, of course, the £22 billion black hole that the government says they found.
It's a bit bigger than that now, isn't it? I don't know. Can't keep up with this black hole. Christopher, we'll have to leave it there. But thank you very much indeed, Christopher Hope, our political editor. We'll speak to him, I hope, a little bit later. Well, joining us now is the Head of Policy and Research at the Trussell Trust, Sumi Rabindra Kumar. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Sumi. Tell me, a lot was said yesterday about welfare. A lot has been critiqued. Are you particularly concerned about one area or another?
We're certainly concerned. I mean, the package that was announced yesterday is a record level of cuts for support for disabled people. And when 3/4 of people who come to food banks in the Trussell community are disabled or live with someone who is disabled, it is very hard not to be extremely concerned by this level of withdrawal of support.
Of course, this all comes in the context of an unprecedented rise in the amount of money being spent on disability benefits in particular. The budget's more or less the same size now as our entire defence budget. A huge rise in the number of people claiming disability benefits, 1,000 more people every single day claiming PIP. I mean, yes, perhaps the largest cuts in history, but against the context of the largest rises of spending in history.
I think it's important to put that into context. It's right that there are rising numbers on health-related benefits, but it's also true that the overall spend on working age benefits as a proportion of GDP has remained level for the last 15 years and is forecast to remain level precisely because we have cut a lot in our social security system and in other parts of the system. So it's important to put that into the kind of wider
Does that not raise an eyebrow, though? If the overall level of benefit spending is staying relatively flat, but the disability part is growing and growing and growing, and the non-disability bit is perhaps shrinking as a proportion of GDP, does that not suggest that people are shopping around for the benefit that they would most like? And is it not the case that these disability benefits, well, PIP, for example, is not means-tested, and then other sorts of disability benefits, they can preclude people from working at all? It's less economically productive to have people on disability benefits than on, for example, job seekers' allowance.
So we know from what we hear at food banks when people come right across the UK that it is not easy to claim for these benefits. It is a high threshold and quite a gruelling process, often quite a distressing process, to claim for these benefits. People don't do it for the fun of it. They do it because they have serious health conditions, because they have disabilities. And when you look at the justification that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor is putting forward, they talk about this moral case to ensure that people can move into work. We very much agree that there should be better support for disabled people. Disabled people themselves say they want to see better support so they can work because they want to work. And so that's why we welcome the DWP's proposals to invest in employment support. That is the right step forward. But we also know there is very much a moral case to answer in terms of the support we provide disabled people, financial support. We just put some polling out. The vast majority, overwhelming majority of voters think that the UK government has a responsibility to ensure that sick and disabled people can meet their essential needs. When you look at how people vote, that's the case whether people want to vote Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem or Reform. There is overwhelming support for that principle. And so the government very much has a moral case to answer on that front as well.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed, Sumi Rabindra Kumar, Head of Policy and Research at the Trussell Trust. I mean, it's difficult. Tom, I can't see any problem with the changes on PIP. On PIP. OK, so there are going to be some stricter tests. That's a good thing when you can claim for things like ADHD and anxiety and depression and all of those sort of things.
Genuinely disabled people to have money taken away from them.
No, of course not. And those with the most severe conditions won't have to face these reassessments, and that's one of the things that people really, really hate and find distressing. But if you're on these lower echelons of the system, you will have to have more reassessments and face-to-face. I think that's fair enough when you're asking for money from the taxpayer.
Yeah, and absolutely.
Surely it is. It's got to be.
And I think there also has to be an assessment in terms of the proportion of this that's going to people with mental health disabilities as opposed to physical health disabilities. Because obviously, if you're a quadriplegic, I mean, you're not going to grow back your legs and arms. But if you suffer from anxiety or depression, there can be ways for you to get better.
But there was an ideological pursuit, wasn't there, over the last however many years to say that physical health equals mental health. So both are exactly on the same level and therefore deserving of equal benefit, etc., etc. I think it has. And there's another story that we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the show that suggests 1 in 3 students at the University of Oxford are now under some kind of disability, which seems rather extraordinary, seeing as that is the elite of the elite. But could it be for things like ADHD?
Well, this is all in the context of public spending, of course, which has been rising and rising and rising. But where does this money, all of this tax that is extracted from all of us, where does it actually go?
Well, the software engineer Tristan Edwards, he's created a website that visualises where all your hard-earned money goes to, and he's joining us now. Tristan, thank you very much. I believe your graph has gone a bit viral over the last day or so, and it's basically just showing people what we all should know, where on earth our taxes are going.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I built this website called wheredoesitallgo.org, which tracks UK government spending based on the latest budget, and then presents this in this pie chart form to make it really easy to see how much we spend in different areas. And yeah, I posted on Twitter, I posted on Reddit, and I think it's generated a lot of healthy discussion about how to fix some of the UK's structural problems. I've messages from think tanks, MPs, reporters, and it feels like people do recognize the problem and they actually want to fix the issues. So I think the effect of the website has been very good so far.
Now, at the top of your website, it says the tax burden is the highest that it's been in history. Where does it all go? Is the implication there that perhaps this money isn't being best spent or could be spent better?
Well, I'll tell you the reason I made it is because I personally moved to the UK 5 years ago. I'm originally from Sweden. Sweden's world famous for having very high taxes. So when I moved, I thought, well, this will be great. I'll pay lower taxes. I'll get more out of my money. What I found pretty quickly was that taxes in the UK have actually increased so much.
Right, OK, well, we're looking at that chart at the moment. Tristan, are you still there?
Yeah. So
sorry, do carry on, Tristan.
Yeah, so it's an awful lot of money. It's £1 trillion spent every year. And I think personally, I felt that, I look at public services and I think these don't seem to work that well. A lot of the times the infrastructure is old, and the waiting list for the NHS are really long. There's potholes everywhere. So we're spending £1 trillion a year, and it just led me to the question, where is all the money going? So I really built the website for myself to genuinely try to understand what's gone wrong. Why do so many people feel that the system isn't delivering for them?
Yeah, I think people will be shocked to see the third largest slice of that pay chart there is debt interest.
Depressing,
just the amount of money we pay to service our debt. That's more than we spend on the military, it's more than we spend on education, it's more than we spend on transport, it's more than we spend on just about anything other than the NHS and welfare.
Yeah, well, Tristan Edwards, thank you very much indeed for shining a light on how exactly we spend our money and where it goes. And whether our politicians are spending it wisely, I guess, is the big question. I think that's such an issue for people. They feel like the social contract is broken, that you pay all this money into a system that then doesn't provide you with what you'd expect it to.
Yeah, well, if you want to have a play around with the website, you can Google where does it all go and search for that, and it's interactive. It's quite eye-opening.
There are still economists arguing that we can just continue to borrow and borrow and borrow forever and ever and ever, and there are no adverse consequences. Debt interest, 104.9 billion of your money.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Which is one of the reasons why we're going to have this fiscal statement from Rachel Reeves next week, because the amount of debt interest being spent, well, interest rates have risen, gilt yields have shot up, and therefore there's less money for us to spend on things like schools and education.
Well, get ready to open your wallet a little bit further.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come on today's programme. Indeed, we'll bring you more on the 19-year-old who wanted to go down as the most famous killer in history. He's just been told he'll spend at least 48 years in prison for murdering his mother and siblings and planning to kill 30 more children.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
There's this US tourist who could face deportation even though she's fled Australia after she ran off with a wild baby wombat in Australia. She took the wombat off her mother.
Yeah, ban her from ever entering the country again, that's what I say.
Should we watch the clip first, just so we can get a good context?
Yeah,
let's take a quick look.
Just caught a baby wombat. Look at the mother. It's like, oh, it's chasing after her.
I caught a baby wombat.
Okay, Mom. Let's let him go.
No, he's right.
All right, let him go. Come here, Mama.
Now, I can only imagine that this woman isn't a mother, because the stress that you have if somebody steals your child, even temporarily or for a joke or something, is awful. So I agree, Emma Trimble. What do you think?
Never mind as a mother. I mean, what kind of psycho does that to an animal? I mean, you can tell the mother's distressed. The child is probably panicking and distressed. Who knows what implications that could have? You know, sometimes when you take a baby away from its mother in the wild, the mother then rejects the baby.
Yeah.
It's such psycho behaviour that I really think deportation, I know this sounds like it's extreme, but deportation isn't enough. If it were me making this decision, I would exclude her from ever coming into the country again.
Well,
I would at least put some kind of lengthy ban on her entering the country if that's the kind of attitude, because Australia is very careful with its wild.
I was going to say, they're pretty stringent on that sort of stuff, aren't they?
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. We're going live to Luton Crown Court, where the police are making a statement on the most potential prolific child killer.
Any other family in the community going through the pain we have suffered. For now, we would ask people to remember Juliana, Kyle and Giselle for the people they were. Julie was a strong, loving mother to her 4 children, who were her absolute world. In her spare time, she was a keen athlete and enjoyed raising money for charity. Kyle was a kind and funny young man who loved football and boxing. He was a big talent with massive potential. Giselle was a beautiful soul and caring young girl with an infectious smile. She was also an exceptional pupil at school and was loved dearly by her friends. We would like to thank the police for their thorough investigation and for supporting us through this difficult time. We would also like to thank the wider community who have been tremendously supportive and generous with donations to help with funeral arrangements. We know that this awful incident has affected others as well as ourselves, but we now want to be able to grieve and try to move on as a family in private. I'll now hand you over to DCI Sam Karner, who is the Senior Investigating Officer.
Our thoughts today are first and foremost with Juliana, Kyle and Giselle and all those who knew and loved them. All 3 have been at the absolute forefront of our thoughts throughout this whole investigation. Juliana, aged 48, Kyle, aged 16, and Giselle, aged just 13, were brutally murdered by someone they loved, who they should have been able to trust. It is their names we should be saying and remembering today and in the future, rather than the person who carried out such sickening crimes. It's been incredibly difficult for their loved ones in the aftermath of what happened, and I would ask that they be left to process their grief in peace. In my entire policing career, which has included many years spent on the major crime team, I've never encountered anyone capable of such horrific acts while showing no remorse. I've been utterly shocked and appalled by the actions and plans of the offender in this case, and I'm pleased that this truly evil individual will serve a significant proportion of his life behind bars. This has been an incredibly difficult and complex investigation, and I would like to thank all the officers and staff involved in achieving this result today. That includes the officers and paramedics who displayed such bravery responding to the initial 999 call. The crime scene investigators who worked painstakingly to recover evidence from such a horrendous scene. The digital investigators who had to review some of the most awful material from the offender's devices. And our major crime team who meticulously pieced together the evidence to help secure the conviction and jail sentence. Their professionalism and dedication has allowed us to keep fighting for the victims, to get justice and ensure the person responsible is not able to cause any more harm.
I am Sian Saunders, Senior Crown Prosecutor for the Crown Prosecution Service. Our thoughts today are with those who knew and loved Juliana, Giselle and Kyle. Nicholas Prosper's cold and calculated killing of his mother, brother and sister, and the revelation that he planned to shoot a class of school children and their teachers has left his family devastated and an entire community in shock. The case presented by the Crown Prosecution Service, supported by a detailed investigation by the police, laid bare the scale of his planning and the extent of his disturbing interest in mass murder. The evidence in this case was indisputable, and unable to defend his actions, he admitted to his crimes. It is beyond comprehension that a young man would want to kill those closest to him and target innocent young children. His clear lack of empathy and remorse is highly unusual and deeply concerning. We recognise the deep distress and anxiety felt by those in the local community upon learning the detail of these chilling crimes. Now that the criminal proceedings are concluded, we hope that the loved ones of Juliana, Giselle and Kyle can begin to rebuild their lives.
OK, well, there we go. We're just listening to a police statement following the sentencing of Nicholas Prosper, the 19-year-old man who killed his mother, his brother and his sister and was planning to kill 30 children between the age of 4 and 5 at his old primary school and 2 teachers.
Well, we can go live to Luton Crown Court back there now with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, for more analysis. And, Mark, this is a very sombre occasion.
Yeah, and very difficult. You heard from the police about the way in which those first responders had to deal with the most horrific scene inside the family flat here in Luton, with the bodies of Nicholas Prosper's mother lying in the hallway alongside her 16-year-old son Kyle, and of course the body of 13-year-old Giselle lying partially under a table in the living room as well. An absolutely horrific scene, as they had all been shot through the head, and in addition, of course, Kyle had also been shot in the chest. He'd been stabbed and slashed more than 100 times. There were blood splatters all around the flat, according to the police when they arrived, including blood-stained handprints. It was just a scene from absolute hell that the police and the paramedics first on scene had to deal with, as they then, of course, launched the manhunt for Nicholas Prosper himself. Now, you heard there from the Detective Chief Inspector, the senior investigating officer for Bedfordshire Police, talking about how Nicholas Prosper was a truly evil individual and how he is satisfied that this young man, 19 at the moment, will still spend the majority of his life behind bars before he is even eligible for parole. And of course, just because you're eligible for parole doesn't necessarily follow that you will be granted parole. It will be up to the parole board to assess what potential risk you might still pose to the public in 48, 49 years' time from now before they even consider you for release. But just finally, on the family itself of Nicholas Prosper, a message read out on their behalf, talking about just how devastated they are by the actions of this young man. They said they had no idea what Nicholas Prosper was planning, because for much of the year prior to these murders, he had hidden himself away for most of the time in his bedroom, cutting himself off from other family members.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mark White, for bringing us that update outside Luton Crown Court there. Thank you very much. We'll speak to you a little bit later. I mean, it's just shocking, absolutely shocking. I mean, a lot of people are asking, why has he not got a whole life order? 18 years old, you know, Axel Cabana didn't get one because he was below the age of 18.
Yeah, but this guy's below the age of 20, and apparently that's another.
I'm slightly confused.
Here's the thing, he could be out age 70, and then what happens? He gets a state pension, he's got autism, so he might get a car on Motability. I mean, we're going to be paying for this man, not just in prison, but if he's released at the end of these 49 years, he could have more than a decade of his life free, out of prison, walking around and living off taxpayers like you and me.
Well, hopefully he won't ever leave that prison, but who knows. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on the show today. Yes, Britain's struggling car industry, yet another struggling industry. Once the home of booming UK business, the Oxford town of Cowley is now falling victim to the net zero drive. We'll reveal more after this.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. On the M8 in Glasgow, there's a lane closed westbound where a lorry's broken down at junction 16 at Craighall, with queues towards there from junction 13 at Provan. There are delays of up to an hour and a half to Stena Line sailings with Cairn Ryan and Belfast. On the Isle of Anglesey, the A5 is blocked each way by an accident at Gwaltmai, causing delays. Cambridgeshire, the A47 is closed each way at Wansford after an accident. And on the M25 in Hertfordshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed clockwise at junction 18 at Chorley Wood, where a car caught fire, with queues 3 miles back beyond junction 17 at Maple Cross. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here with an exclusive opportunity just for you, our incredible GB News viewers. We're giving you the opportunity to win a VIP studio tour right here at GB News HQ. Plus, you'll also get to meet yours truly. It's easy to enter. Just head to gbnews.com/community competition and follow the easy steps. Don't miss out. Enter now, and I'll see you soon at GB News. Full T's and C's apply.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain. It's now 20 to 2 in the afternoon. Now, lots of you getting in touch about this welfare crackdown, if you want to call it. The government trying to save about $5 billion over several years.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the budget is ballooning, so whether it will be an actual real terms cut remains to be seen.
Well, that's very true, actually. Yes, Terry's got in touch with me on Twitter, actually, and saying that her son has been diagnosed with autism. He's 34 years old. The virus pushed him over the edge. He has an HGV licence, but he can no longer get out the house because he has mental health meltdowns weekly, can't eat, clean for himself, etc. And he needs PIP, to help him with this. Now, these are not the people we were talking about when we said that PIP has been stretched too far. I know how bad severe autism can be and how debilitating it can be for people of all backgrounds up and down the country. Absolutely not what's saying the rise of things like ADHD, anxiety and depression. These are very difficult things to monitor, and there is a question over whether you should get certain disabilities for those type of conditions.
We had a person write in the previous show who was saying he knew of someone who had applied to get PIP once, was refused, a second time was refused, and then went to a charity to help him with the application. And the charity constructed the application just the right way, using just the right buzzwords, that then the money started flowing. And the question is, if it can be that easily done, there's an overworked person at the other end of the phone line who's just looking out for certain words. It's a tick box exercise. I mean, it's a government programme. Of course it's a tick box exercise. If just saying certain trigger words that can be gamed can get you hundreds of pounds every week from taxpayers' money, surely there's a better way to construct this system that isn't just over-the-phone consultation, that is in-purse, matching people to need, making sure that the genuine people in need of disability benefit get disability benefit, and making sure that those who frankly are trying to game the system are weeded out.
Yeah, and I mean, I really do feel for you, Terry. It must be awful, your son being violent at times, and you say that the PIP could go towards counselling, and if he's finding it very hard to get the PIP, I mean, that does sound awful. It sounds as though he is someone who should be receiving PIP. He's worked, he's had his HGV licence, his mental health has just got really, really bad, and the autism is quite severe by the sounds of it. And that's the sort of person who should probably be getting PIP to help with allowance.
But again, it's got to be individualised,
But
right?
it's got to be individualised,
I mean, Elon Musk probably has a whole host of spectrum disorders. I think he's admitted to that in the past. That doesn't mean he should be getting taxpayers' money. I mean, there are people who are high-functioning, there are people who are not high-functioning. I mean, and if we're just going to say you've got a disorder, therefore you get this money, is that the best way to construct a system?
Yes, and I'm not sure many Oxford University students, the elite of the elite, the cream of the crop, should be receiving a PIP for ADHD. But that's just my opinion. But yes, Ian's got in touch and said, Tom really has a wild imagination, suggesting that life in 49 years will be anything like life today. You really think anyone will be on benefits at all in 49 years, Tom, or have a state pension, or even be driving cars? You certainly think the pension's going to be gone.
To be fair, I do not believe that there will be a state pension. I certainly don't believe I will be getting a state pension by the time I retire.
Not. You don't deserve one after all you've said.
Well,
if taking it away from you.
If you're in search of perhaps a sunnier retirement, somewhere to spend your state pension, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine? Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Whilst we're enjoying plenty of sunshine across the UK at the moment, it's a cool and blustery picture across the eastern Med, and we have stormy conditions out towards the west as well. So parts of Portugal and Spain really seeing some very unsettled weather with thunderstorms, heavy rain and strong winds over the next few days. Fine across most of Italy though, with some sunshine, and fairly decent across Greece and Turkey, but cool and blustery in those strong northwesterly winds. Temperatures are set to increase though over the next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello and welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Through Wednesday, dry and sunny for many parts of the UK. Will be some stronger breezes down towards the southwest, but for all of us it's feeling warmer, and that's because low pressure to the southwest of the UK and higher pressure to the east is drawing up our winds from the south. So with that, the air is dry, there'll be plenty of sunshine, and our temperatures will be heading upwards for the coming few days. So for the vast majority, as I say, a lovely sunny afternoon on Wednesday. The main exception being down towards the southwest, where for parts of South Wales, southwest England into the Midlands, we'll see a bit more cloud. Just a small chance we could see 1 or 2 spots of rain from this, but the sunshine will be hazy at times, not necessarily always cloudy, with highs of 17 in London and temperatures elsewhere faring not too bad. So as we pick up the picture then this evening across Scotland, you can see a lovely end to the day, lots of sunshine around, but those temperatures already starting to slip down under those clear skies. Plenty of fine weather to end the day for Northern Ireland and indeed for Northern England, but you can see the temperatures just dropping as we head into 6 p.m. As we come further south across many parts of Wales, the Midlands, that's where we'll see a bit more in the way of cloud. As I say, 1 or 2 light spots of rain are possible. But that cloud will tend to melt away a little bit as we go through the night. So for many of us, it's a clear night once again. Temperatures not as cold across southern areas as they were this morning, but further north you can see the blue developing across Scotland, Northern Ireland and also Northern England. So quite a widespread frost. Temperatures in rural spots down to -5 or -6 as we start Thursday morning. But as I say, less in the way of frost further south. So a lovely sunny start to the day on Thursday for most places once again, and really it's set fair for all of us. A little bit, that sunshine a little bit hazy out towards the west through the day, but again, for many of us it's a fine picture. 1 or 2 showers may bubble up through the Midlands and East Anglia into the afternoon, but look at that, highs of 20 degrees, that's 68 Fahrenheit. Goodbye.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 48 minutes past 1, and we're going to go straight to our reporter Jack Carson, who's got a fascinating story for us about the iconic British Mini. Jack, take it away.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you both. Well, we're here in Cowley in Oxford, of course, the home of the Mini, but recently BMW have announced plans to pause a £600 million investment which would secure more than 4,000 jobs. That investment being delayed, they say, due to multiple uncertainties around the future of the automotive industry. So we've been here today finding out about the impact. Earlier on, we spoke to Dominic Masala. He worked at this plant for 25 years. How important is this plant here to the area? How important is it?
What, now?
Now and when you were there.
Very important, because it created jobs for the Oxfordshire, and I think it's very good because, well, lots of they create jobs, and it's good for the country, really, not just Oxford, but the country.
How do you feel then when BMW say they're pausing a £600 million investment because they're unsure around the future of electric cars, people not necessarily buying electric cars? How does that make you feel? Do you worry for the future here?
I think yes, I am worrying about the future of this, but I don't think it's a lot to do with Fortune only the company. It's to do with the government as well in this area now. But people can't buy these cars; they're too expensive.
Yes, you can hear there from Dominic just how important this plant is to the area. I mentioned just before, it's 4,500 jobs that are currently supported by this plant. It's been here for decades. In the past, it's been British Leyland, Austin, Rover, and of course, most recently, BMW Group, who produce the Minis here. Now, there are still plans to produce internal combustion engine Minis here for years to come, but in 2030, the government looking to bring once again that ban in on petrol and diesel cars, meaning that this would have to be an all-electric vehicle car plant, and that's what this £600 million investment, which has been paused, is helping them to do. There's still investment, BMW say, in this plant. They are investing in a logistics centre in order for that to be able to continue car production here in the area. But all of this concern, these concerns that BMW is saying, these multiple uncertainties they refer to on pausing this £600 million investment in this area, coming because we have seen a demise in electric car sales, new electric vehicle car sales across Europe, down by more than 3% in 2024. But quotas put in from government in the UK, meaning manufacturers are having to produce zero emission vehicles. This year, 28% of all UK car sales must be electric. This quota is set to then increase annually. Give you a bit of a sense, last year in 2024 it was only 22%, so the quotas are increasing. Given those strict quotas, if manufacturers fail to meet them, they could face fines suggested of up to £15,000 per car. So manufacturers looking at investment in the future. People like BMW obviously now considering where that £600 million goes, where it's spent, because they've paused it for the time being. But the government's saying that they have allocated £2.3 billion in order to help manufacturers, help consumers as well move to the switch. But lots of people we've spoken to today simply citing to us that buying a brand new electric car for them just quite simply isn't affordable. We've spoken to a couple of pensioners. One man earlier told us that he was happy just to keep his car as long as possible. He can't afford a brand new electric car. So that is the reason that people aren't necessarily switching to electric, and it's the problem that manufacturers like BMW are having and why they're pausing such investments.
It's devastating all round, isn't it, when you've got a government quota system and the company is sort of hoping that people buy the products that they're making. But if the people aren't willing to buy the products, how do you meet the quota? I mean, it's really hard to square that circle if there isn't the willingness there from the population. Jack Carson, thanks so much for bringing us that story there live outside the Mini factory.
Well, I mean, what the government do? I mean, I suppose they could force us all to only buy electric cars. I mean, they've thought about that, but then backtracked away from that as well.
Have they tried doing a carrot rather than a stick? I know that the infrastructure in this country for driving electric vehicles is actually really, really shoddy.
Yeah, it's not great.
Compare it to other countries around the world where there are fast charging stations just about everywhere. I mean, how many charging stations, fast charging stations, are there for electric cars in this country?
In France, they have them everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. You stop anywhere, you stop at a restaurant on the side of the road, there'll be a few. You stop in a little village somewhere,
you know what I'm going to say?
What?
Town and Country Planning Act. In France, you can build anything.
Yeah, well, it suits the electric vehicle market, I suppose, but £600 million of investment just paused. Keir Starmer stood up today and said, everything's great with the economy, it's much better than when we came into power. Well, jobs are being lost left, right and centre.
Here's the thing, we can't possibly build a new electric car charging station because it might affect a bat, a newt or a spider. Natural England will definitely have something to say about that.
Well, after this short break, we're going to be speaking to the Shadow Justice.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front.
Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. After a fine, sunny and fairly warm day, as we head through tonight with clear skies, for many there will be a widespread frost, but less cold across the far south, which I'll come on to in a second. We've still got low pressure to the west, higher pressure to the east. That's drawing our air up from the south at the moment, so things are set to turn warmer over the coming few days. But overnight tonight, quite a widespread frost developing for Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland. Temperatures in our most rural spots down as low as -5, but with a bit more cloud further south, it won't be as frosty as it was on Wednesday morning, so you won't need your scraper first thing, I think, across these areas. Temperatures in towns and cities, 5s and 6s, a little bit colder than that in the countryside. But what does that mean for Thursday morning is that most of us start the day with plenty of sunshine. Taking a zoom in across the southern half of the UK first thing, there will be some patchy cloud around, but already through the morning those temperatures starting to respond to that fairly strong spring sunshine. A little bit hazier across Northern Ireland and parts of northwest England, but as we come back into Scotland, it is a cold and frosty start to the day here, but you'll be greeted with plenty of sparkling sunny skies. And then through the course of the day on Thursday, it's more of the same. For many of us, the sunshine prevails through the course of the day. That sunshine a little bit hazier out towards the west with just some high cirrus cloud filtering across the skies. And into the afternoon, we may just see 1 or 2 clouds bubbling up to give 1 or 2 very light showers, maybe just north of London. But temperature-wise, it's a warm day across the UK. Highs of 20 degrees, that's 68 Fahrenheit there in London, but mid-teens to high teens widely elsewhere. Through Thursday evening then, most of that cloud that develops will melt away, so once again it's a dry and a clear night. A bit more of a breeze developing down towards the southwest, and there are some signs of a change as we head towards the weekend. A few more in the way of showers, and temperatures still on the fairly mild side. Goodbye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be the next big winner of the Great British Giveaway, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not 1, but 2 sought-after designer watches, so you can style it out this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. 1 entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Wednesday, the 19th of March. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch clashed over public spending and the Chancellor's handling of the economy at Prime Minister's questions.
So why are we having an emergency budget next week?
If you look in nearly every country from Canada to the UK that imported large amounts of cheap labour, you've seen productivity stagnate.
US Vice President J.D. Vance accuses Western nations, including Britain, of growing lazy by relying on cheap labour instead of driving productivity. Is he right?
And do kids have it easy? Not only are GCSEs potentially being cut back to ease stress on pupils, but nearly all University of Oxford students screened for ADHD are told they have it after just a 90-minute assessment, meaning they get extra time in their exams. Goodness me, what's going on?
What is going on? And Prince Harry's visa documents, well, they're now unsealed. But all of the information you would want to see has been blacked out. Is that fortunate for the Prince? Stay tuned.
Now, it's under 2 weeks until new guidelines by the Sentencing Council are implemented. These guidelines have been coming under great scrutiny, not just from Conservative politicians, but actually from the Justice Secretary herself as well, saying that they could deliver two-tier justice. But if the Justice Secretary and the Shadow Justice Secretary both disagree with these guidelines, why are they still going ahead?
Why are they still going ahead? Do our parliamentarians, our ministers, just have no power to decide these things? Surely it should be them who decides what our Sentencing Council guidelines are. But these guidelines essentially suggest that depending on the colour of your skin, your religion, whether you're transgender, maybe even your sexuality, you could receive a lighter penalty when it comes to a prison sentence or anything else. So there you go. Is that two-tier justice and what needs to be done now? We're going to be speaking to the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenner, in just a moment. He was the one who revealed all of this. And to her credit, Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, did say that she was highly unimpressed with this. But has she done anything?
Well, post your views, your comments. Visit gbnews.com/your say to get involved in the conversation. We'll be getting into that question of two-tier justice after your latest news headlines.
Tom, Emily, thank you. A very good afternoon. It's just gone 2 o'clock. These are your latest headlines. Our top story. 19-year-old Nicholas Prosper has been sentenced to a minimum of 48 years for murdering his mother, brother and sister in a shooting in Luton last year. Prosper pleaded guilty yesterday to killing his mother and teenage siblings in September 2024. He also admitted to purchasing a shotgun without a licence. Court hearings have revealed that he had fantasised about becoming the country's worst mass school killer, with a plan to kill 30 children and 2 teachers at his old school. Bedfordshire Police have described Prosper as a truly evil man and earlier read a statement on behalf of the Prosper family.
We are devastated by the loss of our loved ones and are horrified to hear what Nicholas had planned. He had completely isolated himself from us over the past year, and we had no knowledge of his intentions. We now see the deaths of Juliana, my son Kyle, and daughter Giselle had much more meaning and importance. Their deaths and the fast response of Bedfordshire Police stopped any other family in the community going through the pain we have suffered.
In other news, the Kremlin has said that Putin and his American counterpart Donald Trump trust each other following their 2-hour phone call yesterday afternoon. A Kremlin spokesman said that the two leaders are determined to restore their badly damaged ties. Despite that, Russia launched a missile attack into Ukraine overnight, breaking the 30-day energy infrastructure ceasefire. Ukraine have reported they shot down 72 of the 145 Russian drones. Sir Keir Starmer expressed his support for President Zelensky and Prime Minister's questions this afternoon before going on to comment on the resumption of warfare in Gaza.
Last night I spoke to President Zelensky to discuss progress that President Trump had made with Russia towards a ceasefire, and I took the opportunity to reaffirm our unwavering support to the people of Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, I'm deeply concerned about the resumption of Israeli military action in Gaza. The images of parents carrying their children, young children, to hospitals have emerged over the last few days are truly shocking, alongside the sheer number of people who've been killed. And we will do all that we can to ensure the resumption of the ceasefire, to get the remaining hostages out and to get aid that's desperately needed in.
And the royal family has been notably excluded from Australia's new $5 note. The Reserve Bank of Australia has announced that the redesigned bill will feature an Indigenous theme, replacing the image of King Charles III. King Charles is the head of state for the Commonwealth nation, emphasising the significant shift in the country's currency design. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour, but now it's back to Tom and Emily.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's now 5 minutes past 2 in the afternoon, and in fewer than 13 days, a two-tier justice system could become reality.
Yes, new sentencing rules set to take effect on the 1st of April. No, it's not a joke. They're sparking outrage over fairness, costs and court delays.
Wish it were a joke. The government is under pressure to act, but will they step in to stop the shake-up before it's too late?
Well, we're joined now by the Shadow Secretary of State for Justice, Robert Jenrick. Robert, you highlighted this some time ago now, and to be fair to the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, she was quick to say this is an outrage, this should be stopped, but it seems that nothing's actually changed.
That's right. So we came across these 2 weeks ago when they were sent out to all the magistrates and judges across the country, giving them notice that on the 1st of April, new sentencing guidelines will come into place, which are biased against men, against white people, against Christians, going against the very basic foundational principle of our justice system, which is equality before the law. At the time, the Justice Secretary knew nothing about this. She was completely oblivious to it. But you're right to say that she said she would stop this. Well, here we are. Less than 13 days to go. Nothing seems to have happened. She sent a letter, she's had a meeting, but the promise to bring forward emergency legislation, to kibosh this, has come to absolutely nothing. So we protested last night at the Ministry of Justice. We projected a countdown onto the building, and we said that Labour might be content for this to go ahead, but we Conservatives are not, because we believe in equality under the law. We do not want a biased justice system.
Well, we're looking on our screens now at that video that you posted out onto social media last night, using pretty innovative campaigning tactics, projecting this message on the side of the government building. Were you inspired by left-wing campaigners who do this quite regularly?
Well, look, we're in opposition now. I think we have to learn from what our opponents did in recent years and be street fighters. And I'm not letting this issue drop. I think it's incredibly important. I don't want your route through the justice system to be determined by the colour of your skin, by your gender or by your religion. I want to ensure that everyone gets equal treatment before the law. And so we have to see change. And there is now less than 13 days for the Justice Secretary and Keir Starmer to act. Or it's going to be two-tier justice under two-tier Keir.
And just a reminder of why you believe this is so problematic. You're currently in the system, is your ethnicity, background, religion, race, whatever else, whether you're transgender, what your gender identity is none of that taken into consideration? Because we do have quite a lot of laws that tend to make these things quite primary.
Well, when judges are considering a sentence to give someone, they do take factors into account. For example, a pregnant woman. And I think we could all agree that that is something that should be very carefully thought through, because you don't want to put a woman in jail who is pregnant. If there is any way to avoid that, it's obviously bad for the woman, obviously very bad for the unborn child. But here, the proposal is to go much further than that and require judges to prepare detailed reports called pre-sentencing reports, which generally lead to non-custodial sentences for particular groups. And these are absolute blanket cohorts, like all ethnic minorities, all women, all minority faith communities, i.e. anyone who isn't a Christian. This is bias, it's incredibly crude, And it's going to cost millions of pounds as well. It's not just unfair, it's going to put immense pressure on the system. The probation service is going to have to prepare all these reports. That's going to put pressure on them. They're already under huge strain. And it's going to lead to further delays in the court system, just at a time where, you know, cases as serious as a rape trial are being listed as far off as 2028. We can't afford this, it's not sensible, and it's deeply unfair.
The Sentencing Council says that these haven't just been conjured up now. They say they've been in development for 3 years. The majority of that time, of course, your party was in government. For some of that time, you yourself were in government. Why didn't the Conservatives put a stop to this while these were under development?
Well, the rules that are coming into force on the 1st of April are materially different to any one that was seen by the ministers under the last Conservative government, as the Sentencing Council themselves have said in a letter they sent to Shabana Mahmood. But look, we are where we are. What is really important now is we stop this. And I have a solution to that. I brought a bill to Parliament on Friday, which would have given the Secretary of State for the first time the power to amend or reject biased guidelines like this. I said she should use her powers of appointment to sack the people on the Sentencing Council, which she could do today. She chose to oppose the bill. She's chosen to stand by the members of the Sentencing Council.
She's not going to accept your bill, because that's not the done thing, is it, when you're in government, to accept the opposition's bill. But what she could do is essentially bring forward her own bill. And is that the only thing she can do to stop this? Because there's been an exchange of letters, as you say. She's had a meeting with the Sentencing Council. What can she do today, well, in the next 13 days, to stop this from happening?
Well, she could bring her own bill forward if party politics doesn't want to back mine. We would support emergency legislation to change this and stop having this biased system. It sounds like she's thrown herself at the mercy of the Sentencing Council and is currently begging them to change course. Who knows if they'll do that? I don't think that's good enough, because this is such a fundamental change to the rule of law in our country, and it'll be immensely corrosive to public trust in the criminal justice system if you, Tom, felt you were going to get a different system of justice to somebody who had a different colour skin or abided by a different religion. That is completely outrageous and wrong and needs to be stopped.
The Sentencing Council was set up in 2010. It's one of these myriad bodies across the British state that can make decisions without regard to politics and politicians. And it's why you'd need to go to the extraordinary, extreme step of passing new legislation to overrule this. But we've seen this not just in justice, we've seen this in transport. I mean, Natural England is another one of these arm-length bodies that can dictate £100 million must be spent on a tunnel for bats. And again, politicians seem like they have no control over it. Does there need to be a wider conversation now about what ministers and politicians can actually control in this country? Because it seems to be that actually the people we elect to Parliament have very little power now.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. A lot of the British state doesn't feel like it's working right now, and ministers feel like they are powerless to get things done. And part of the reason is that over successive governments, we've created these arm's-length bodies, quangos, run by civil servants who are often completely unaccountable to ministers, to Parliament and to the public, and that needs to change. And for the judiciary, of course they should be making sentences free from interference by politicians. But where they're making political decisions, such as this, then absolutely ministers and the Secretary of State should have the ability to step in and change it. So I think fundamental reform is necessary.
Yeah, I mean, if these guidelines do go ahead and then you have examples of them being put into place, I mean, it's a recipe for, well, the reverse of social cohesion. Societal breakdown. You can't have people, you know, it's a recipe for grievance, isn't it? You know, you can't have a multicultural, multiracial society that works in harmony if people are getting special treatment. But thank you very much indeed, Robert Jenrick, Shadow Justice Secretary, here with us in the studio.
Well, we're going to move on now because the Prime Minister is defending his party's economic record.
Yeah, speaking of Prime Minister's questions, Keir Starmer faced some pressure on the economy from the Leader of the Opposition.
The Chancellor claimed that her budget was a once-in-a-Parliament reset. So why are we having an emergency budget next week?
Mr. Speaker, we have delivered record investment into this country, had 3 interest rates cut in a row, and wages are going up faster than prices, which is a massive cost of living boost. That's after only 8 months, after 14 years of absolute failure. What do they do? Interest rates 11%, massive 22 million black hole in the economy. They crashed the economy. We're rebuilding Britain.
Well, it was a big moment of debate in the House of Commons, the question over the veracity of and the desirability of Labour's reform to the welfare state. But why don't we extend that debate now? Joining us is the Communications Manager at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Reem Ibrahim, and the creator of Turn Left Media, Curtis Daly. Reem, we're going to start with you. What do you make of the government's war on welfare?
I think it's absolutely tragic that millions of people across the country are being consigned to a lifetime of worklessness. There are thousands of people that are my age, they're in their early 20s, that are being told at such a young age that forever that they are not able to work and that they're going to be consigned to that lifetime of worklessness. There was a really interesting report by NHS Confederation and Boston Consulting Group that found that between 2021 and 2022, 63,000 people went from being economically inactive because they were students to then being economically inactive because they were signed off on long-term sickness benefits. Now, the reason why I think this is so tragic is because A, we are all paying the highest taxes since the Second World War. We are spending huge amounts of money on people that could be working that aren't. But really the fundamental point here is that this is a waste of human potential. There are millions of people across the country that absolutely could be working, that could be contributing, that could be doing something with their lives, and yet the system has incentivized them not to. Now, I don't think that all of these people are lazy. I think it's basic incentives. If you're being told by the state, we know that you are depressed or you have anxiety, but you know what? We won't let you work. You can just stay at home. It's going to make their mental illnesses so much worse. And it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're being told that, it's going to make you worse in terms of your own mental illness. And it means that so many people are just being trapped in this welfare system and unable to work. Now, I think that is the real tragedy.
OK, Reem, let's turn to Curtis Daly. Curtis, are you comfortable with the number of people who are currently languishing on welfare?
Well, I reject your framing of the question, and what Reem said is completely untrue. PIP has a 0% fraud rate, personal independent payments, 0%. Now, a woman named Georgia...
How do you know that, Curtis? Curtis, how do you know that? How do you know that?
Let me finish. I'll let you speak.
No, I need the evidence to back up that claim, because that is a bold claim, Curtis.
A woman named Georgina, who has MS, she went on the BBC and explained she will lose £200 per month. Now, let's look at the details of the policy, because there's facts that I care about here.
Curtis, so do I. Where's the evidence that there is a 0% fraud?
Do not interrupt me, because I've not interrupted you. Labour have introduced a score method to see if people are eligible for PIP. One of the examples is bathing. So you need to score 4 points in order to be eligible for PIP. There is an entire document of these questions for applicants. Those who need aid or appliance or supervision, physical assistance with their hair or body below the waist, and assistance to be able to get in and out of the bath or shower wouldn't score a 4, which is one of the thresholds. Now, why are we debating about benefit cuts? We could be doing what Norway did, is introduce a 1.1% wealth tax. And 2022, when they did that...
Curtis, you know full well the wealthy already pay huge amounts in taxes. You know full well that's the case. Fundamentally, can I just say, on this point about...
Hang on, let's not speak over each other. Let's not speak over each other.
We're talking about unearned wealth. You're talking about income. Now, we could be... Look, we had a global pandemic, right? There was a huge lockdown, and guess what? The government spent billions of pounds, and it should have done on things like furlough. However, the very richest, not talking about people who do well, I'm talking about the billionaire class, they doubled their wealth while we made sacrifices. It's their turn to start paying back. If you work,
Curtis, they already pay huge amounts of money in tax.
Curtis, let's go to Reem. Curtis, you've said a lot. Let's go to Reem now on that.
Curtis, we already, the top wealthy, top 1%, already pay about a quarter of the total income that the Treasury receive. So ultimately, they're already spending huge amounts of money. I would say, by the way, forget about the money in this situation, although I think it's really important. Do you think that any system that classifies a quarter of the working population as disabled is working? How do you think it's okay for millions of people in their 20s to be told, if you have depression or anxiety, you are unable to work and then not be receiving that kind of support? Is that system fair?
Do you think it's fair that people with MS will lose £200 a month? And those examples I gave you, because I'm not talking about broad rhetoric here or hyperbole. I went through
It's
the
not
details.
rhetoric. 3 million people. It's the stat. It's the facts. 3 million people.
Those who can't get in and out of the shower without supervision could potentially see a cut. Are you happy about that? To be honest,
you're talking about the potentials here. Those particular people that need it will not.
The point you have this view because you work for the IEA and we don't know who funds them. I suspect it's the oil industry, it's the private insurance companies.
Right. So do you want to respond to my actual arguments rather than accusing me of something?
Who funds you then? Because you never tell us. Like I said, it's time for the very wealthiest to give back, but we're having a debate on who's...
Curtis, we're talking about people being consigned to a lifetime of worklessness, and you're saying you're perfectly fine with that. You're perfectly fine with millions of people across the country being consigned to a lifetime of doing nothing. I think that is a tragedy. I think it is disgusting.
You've absolutely made it up. You pulled that out of nowhere. I'm talking about the policies.
2.8 million people.
I've literally gone through the policy document, right? People are going to lose money when they should be getting PIP. So are you happy that because you think there's this amount of people who are pretending to sponge off the welfare state that we should be attacking people?
I absolutely, can I just say, I have not said that any of those people are sponging off of the welfare state. I think they're probably, let me finish, because you're putting words into my mouth. There probably are people that are lazy, that aren't working, but I think the majority of people that are on long-term sickness benefits are genuinely ill. They have mental illnesses. They might be depressed. They might be anxious. But where is the evidence that the best thing for those people is to be consigned to a lifetime of idleness? There is no evidence for that. Work gives you structure. It gives you purpose in your life. Why do we support a system? Why do you support a system? Let me finish my point. Why do you support a system?
For a pittance,
Curtis, we can't just talk over each other.
You did it to me, so I let you finish first, and you done it to me, so I'm now doing it to you back. There are jobs out there, precarious work, low pay, and you're telling me work makes you happy when you go and work for Amazon for 16-hour days. It's very easy to sit in a studio and say that. Now, I'm not saying
there
we
are
should
800,000 vacancies in the hospitality and retail sector.
There are more people on welfare than there are job applications. There aren't enough jobs out there. What I'm trying to tell you is
800,000 vacancies, Curtis.
I don't want people to be consigned to being on benefits their entire life, but we're talking about people.
But the system you support does.
So if you were condemning the government that they're attacking the very poorest in society rather than looking at the very wealthy, I would welcome that. That if you
Curtis, may I just ask you one question before we leave this? How many billionaires do you think are in the United Kingdom?
What's the relevance of how many billionaires?
Because you're talking about how the billionaire class, you spoke about the billionaire class need to be taxed more to pay for the welfare state. How many billionaires do you think are in the United Kingdom?
We need to be
and don't Google it. How many? Because there are 165 as of last year, down from 177 the year before. Yeah. So I'm just questioning whether the billionaire class will be able to pay for everything you want, Curtis.
I'm trying to tell you, we need to be going not for income taxes. We should be taxing wealth, not work. I'm talking about.
And then the next year there'll be less wealth to tax. Curtis Daly, thank you very much indeed. And Reeb Ibrahim, a very spirited debate. I'm sure our viewers will take points from both of you. Thank you very much indeed.
We'll have to have them both back. I mean, that was cracking.
Well, there you go. There's a proper left-right debate for you guys.
But do you want to accrue more wealth, perhaps to be hit by a wealth tax in the future? Well, you can get in touch to our spring giveaway. Yes, it's your chance to win a fabulous designer handbag, 2 highly sought-after designer watches, and an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you would like. I'm sure it's a very meaningful number to whoever dreamt it up. It's an amazing prize package. It could all be yours. Here are the details.
Spring has sprung with a great British giveaway, and we're giving you the chance to splash out this season with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash. Jet off on your dream holiday, treat yourself to something special, or just save it for a rainy day. You'll also receive 2 brand new designer watches and a Mulberry handbag, so you can really look the part this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come on today's programme. Indeed, do kids have it easy? Not only are GCSEs potentially being cut back to ease on pupil stress, but nearly all of Oxford University's students screened for ADHD, they're told they have it after just a 90-minute assessment. That means they get extra time in their exams. What do you make of it?
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
It's all kicking off in the world of bowling because an historic bowls club could be forced to close after a staggering 2,000% parking fee hike. Members, many of them of course elderly, say they can't afford the jump from 40 quid to an astonishing £840. Now, for some, the club is their social lifeline, but the council insists that the change is necessary to ease financial pressures. Well, of course they would. Well, joining me now to discuss this is the club captain of Eastbourne Parade Bowls Club, Pete Hensman. Pete, welcome to the show. This is an astonishing hike in the car parking costs. It must have simply bowled you all over.
Yeah, to use a phrase, you're quite right. We sort of staggered and worried because of the possibility of closing us.
What's the reaction been within the club to what seems like an eye-watering increase?
Well, as you said, several of our members are saying, we just can't join, we can't afford it. The bus service around here is not particularly good, and they can't carry their bowls or get to the club.
And you've been around since 1897. You've got 70 members, got some wonderful pictures there on screens of people just getting together. Absolutely wonderful thing to do. Healthy, physically, healthy mentally. And of course, a lot of people lose more friends as they get on. Have the council been remotely forthcoming in seeing the light?
I think they've got a bit of a panic on. We got a message inviting us to join the chairman of the council tomorrow to discuss the matter. I hope we're going to get a compromise.
GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past 2, and are exams getting fairer or just easier? Well, Oxford University students are fast-tracked for an ADHD extra time scheme, while GCSEs could be slashed to ease stress.
Yes, 98% of Oxford screenings for ADHD in this test here were given the green light, so they get 90 minutes extra in their exams. And we also hear that GCSEs are now under review because apparently they're a little too stressful for 15 and 16-year-olds. So are we levelling the playing field or just lowering the bar?
Well, joining us to discuss this is the assistant editor at The Critic, Joe Bartosz. Joe, thanks so much for joining us. This is a real and present concern for many people. I mean, the number of children who are now applying for and getting waved through these programmes to deliver extra time.
Yeah, and I mean, what's really concerning is when people are diagnosed with conditions like autism and ADHD, particularly at the high functioning side of things, those who might really need help are being ignored. So I think what we might be seeing are some pushy parents, and actually those who really could benefit, who might be non-verbal or who might have, real care needs, are being ignored.
Yeah, I mean, reading about Oxford University, it is stunning, almost unbelievable, I would say. Apparently, now nearly one in three students at the UK's top university, or at least one of them, are now considered disabled. Now, I imagine these aren't physical disabilities, and I imagine many of them might be ADHD or similar kind of neurodivergent types of things. What do you think, Jo?
Yeah, so the highest, so looking at the figures, and I've written a piece for this for The Critic, the highest percentage, so 27% of those at Oxford on the disability scheme have mental health problems, and then 26% claim to be neurodiverse. Now, of course, lockdown might be a factor. There might be other factors sort of going on here, but it is interesting that a third of them only recognise their disability after enrolling at university. Now, these disabilities quite often come with sort of perks, if you like. Firstly, I think there is an issue of social status, which is something that might seem counterintuitive to those of us of around sort of 40 or so. But actually, I think if you look at the social media bios of a lot of young people, they put their mental health conditions and indeed their neurological conditions as things to be proud of, almost as status symbols. But there's also an issue with, for example, they're allowed to use laptops in exams rather than having to use pen and paper. They get additional time in exams, so 25% extra time in exams, and they potentially also get grants and various other sort of perks. And I think anyone who has met an academic, they do tend to be quite an unworldly bunch. A lot of them would meet the criteria, the diagnostic criteria for ADHD or autism themselves. It's not necessarily a disability. In fact, in some cases, I can think it could be an advantage. I mean, look at Elon Musk. It's hardly harmed his career.
I think that is such an important point, Jo. I mean, looking back through history, who of the great thinkers and great men and women of history have actually been neurotypical?
Yes.
I mean, Winston Churchill famously suffered from depression. Alan Turing had autism. I'd be very surprised if Albert Einstein was neurotypical himself. I mean, why are we treating these things, these gifts to certain people, as disabilities? It seems absolutely bizarre. Jo Bartosz, thanks so much for joining us, assistant editor at The Critic.
I know people are going to shout at me for this, but I don't understand the idea of this extra time anyway. You don't get extra time when you go into the workplace, do you?
No.
So why should you get it when you're doing an exam at one of our top universities? I mean, how did you make it to that top university? Was it the extra time you got in your exams at GCSE and A-level? I mean, do we want equality of outcome? Do we want equality of outcome now?
I mean, this is...
I mean, are we communists?
Are exams meant to level the playing field?
No.
Or find the difference between the ability in certain children?
Some people are better at them than others. That's life. Anyway.
Goodness me, this is
And the University of Oxford should know that. It really
Lots more coming up on today's programme.
If you look in nearly every country from Canada to the UK that imported large amounts of cheap labour, you've seen productivity stagnate.
The US Vice President J.D. Vance accuses Western nations of growing lazy by relying on cheap labour instead of driving productivity. That's to come after your latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon. It's just gone 2:30. These are your latest news headlines. And we start with our top story. 19-year-old Nicholas Prosper has been sentenced to a minimum of 48 years for murdering his mother, brother and sister in a shooting in Luton last year. Prosper pleaded guilty yesterday to killing his mother and teenage siblings in September 2024. He also admitted to purchasing a shotgun without a licence. Court hearings revealed that he had fantasised about becoming the country's worst mass school killer, with a plan to kill 30 children and 2 teachers at his old school. Bedfordshire Police have described Prosper as a truly evil man and earlier read a statement on behalf of the Prosper family.
We are devastated by the loss of our loved ones and are horrified to hear what Nicholas had planned. He had completely isolated himself from us over the past year, and we had no knowledge of his intentions. We now see the deaths of Juliana, my son Kyle, and daughter Giselle had much more meaning and importance. Their deaths and the fast response of Bedfordshire Police stopped any other family in the community going through the pain we have suffered.
In other news, the Kremlin has said that Putin and his American counterpart Donald Trump trust each other following their 2-hour phone call yesterday afternoon. A Kremlin spokesman has said that the two leaders are determined to restore their badly damaged ties. Despite that, Russia launched a missile attack into Ukraine overnight, breaking the 30-day energy infrastructure ceasefire. Ukraine have reported that they have shot down 72 of the 145 Russian drones. Sir Keir Starmer expressed his support for President Zelensky in Prime Minister's questions earlier this afternoon, before going on to comment on the resumption of warfare in Gaza.
Last night I spoke to President Zelensky to discuss progress that President Trump had made with Russia towards a ceasefire, and I took the opportunity to reaffirm our unwavering support to the people of Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, I'm deeply concerned about the resumption of Israeli military action in Gaza. The images of parents carrying their children, young children, to hospitals have emerged over the last few days are truly shocking, alongside the sheer number of people who've been killed. And we will do all that we can to ensure the resumption of the ceasefire, to get the remaining hostages out and to get aid that's desperately needed in.
And progress in lowering smoking rates across England has stalled in recent years, with apparent increases in some areas. The study found that smoking rates in the north fell faster than the national average, where rates almost halved from near 30% to just 15%. However, research has revealed an increase in smoking in the southwest, with rates of smoking climbing by nearly 4%. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Tatiana Sanchez will have your next update.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. There are delays of up to an hour and a half to Stena Line sailings between Care and Ryan and Belfast. In East Yorkshire, the A1079 is closed eastbound from Kexby to Wilberforce to the east of York after an accident. That causing delays heading away from York. On the Isle of Anglesey, the A5 is blocked each way by an accident on Holyhead Road at Gwalchmai. In Gwynedd, the A487 is closed in both directions between Corris and Menforth for emergency repairs, causing queues. And in London, Woodgrange Road is closed by Wanstead Park Station after an accident last night. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 39 minutes past 2, and the United States Vice President, J.D. Vance, has launched a blistering attack on the United Kingdom, claiming that high levels of immigration have caused Britain to stagnate. Take a listen.
If you look in nearly every country from Canada to the UK that imported large amounts of cheap labor, you've seen productivity stagnate. I don't think that's not a total happenstance. I think that the connection is very direct.
Well, he's absolutely right, isn't he? Let's discuss this with former Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs, John Bolton. John, what he said there, I think it's the truth. What do you think, John?
No, I can't speak as an expert on Britain. Of course, he's not an expert on Britain either, but I can tell you in the United States, we need additional labor and additional talents from immigrants. The issue that we should be debating in the United States is whether we, the people, through the government, decide who comes in or whether the immigrants decide for themselves. That's the difference between legal immigration and illegal immigration. I favor substantially increasing the amount of legal immigration into the United States, even as we, I think, quite justifiably cut down on illegal immigration. I think the story of America is the story of immigrants who built a great country. And I think many Canadians would say the same. So I don't know where Vance gets his data. Maybe he'd like to explain.
Do you see a difference between J.D. Vance and Donald Trump with their rhetoric when it comes to legal immigration? Because I was listening to Donald Trump speak at the first cabinet meeting he held, and he was talking about perhaps having 10 or 5 million more people coming in on his new golden visa scheme. These are high-earning $5 million each visas, which, I mean, it does seem unlikely that you'd get 10 million new Americans via that route. But he seemed very comfortable about the idea of the American population growing by 10 million.
Yeah, he has his own political take on this, but I heard him say several times during the first term, passing on a suggestion that a number of people have made. Every time you have a foreign student who comes to the U.S. and graduates from one of our universities, whether with a bachelor's degree or an advanced degree, the suggestion is you clip a green card onto their diploma. And instead of going back to their country of origin, they stay and make the United States a more productive country. Now, that's letting universities decide your immigration policy, which I don't necessarily agree with. But the point is, there are many people around the world who would make a real contribution to the U.S., whether it's through legal immigration quotas or through political asylum. I could imagine giving political asylum to tens of thousands of people from Hong Kong who are trying to flee the repression that the Chinese government is imposing.
Well,
there.
the United Kingdom did that. We gave, I think it was over 200,000 Hong Kongers who had British national overseas passports, the ability to come, and around 200 or 250,000 Hong Kongers did come to the United Kingdom. It was part of the big wave of migration we experienced in the last few years. But seemingly that could be what J.D. Vance is referring to.
Well, I don't know what he's referring to. I'm not sure he does either. Canada did the same thing with Hong Kong people and got tens of thousands of people to move to Canada who could have come to the United States. So, I think you've got to be realistic about this. A growing population means a growing economy, a growing military capability. China's got the opposite problem. Its population has peaked. It's declining. The demographers say it will decline for the rest of the century. and so will their political and military.
So I'm going to have to come in here because I don't think that is what J.D. Vance is referring to. I think he's referring to the millions of low-skilled migrants that the West have taken in from often culturally incompatible countries, not the same as highly skilled people and highly educated people coming from Hong Kong or other countries around the world. J.D. Vance is not talking about those people. He's talking about the huge amounts of low-skilled labour that has meant that businesses haven't had to develop in terms of their productivity as they may have done if we hadn't had that huge amount of labour coming in, cheap labour.
Well, maybe you're better informed than I am, but maybe you could explain where all these low quality people immigrated into Canada recently. I hadn't noticed that. I don't think Canada's suffering from low productivity. Look, every country's got to make its own decision who it lets in and who it doesn't. That's the key point. In other words, do sovereign governments, especially in democracies, control their borders, or does somebody else control their borders? I'm totally in sync with the idea that the democratic governments should have control of their borders. I just think more people is a good thing.
What do you make of J.D. Vance commenting quite so much on the affairs of other countries? We, of course, heard him at the Munich Security Conference not so long ago in a speech that really blew the lid off that conference and created a huge political reaction from the United Kingdom to Germany to France to Poland. Now we're hearing these comments about Canada and the UK. The Vice President is really sort of going around the world with his comments.
Well, he's going around the free world. He ought to spend a little more time critiquing the governments of China, Russia, North Korea, Iran. That's where the real critique is needed. Look, it's often all of us as private citizens have opinions about other governments, what's going on around the world. It's one thing to hold that kind of opinion as a private citizen. It's another kind of thing to say it as a public official, particularly a very senior public official. And what Vance and Trump both don't seem to realize is that you can feel very good about how smart you are about, let's just take Canada again as an example, and make these kinds of disparaging comments. What Trump has done in Canada is take what looked to be, in their upcoming parliamentary election, a blowout win for the Conservative Party, 20 points in the lead over the Liberal Party. Now Justin Trudeau is out, Mark Carney is in as the prime minister and Liberal leader, and Trump's comments have made what was once a blowout into a competitive race. So it just shows the lack of self-awareness. If you're going to critique somebody, make sure it's your political opponents who don't benefit from it, and they're just not aware enough to even understand that point.
Yeah, it seems to me that he's deeply concerned about the future of some European nations and the West, and is concerned about issues like integration, social cohesion, that, unfortunately, we do have big issues with in this country and in other Western nations that won't be resolved by just saying, oh, well, let more and more people into this country. Well, actually, there are massive issues, culturally, social cohesionally, and also in terms of economic benefits, too. We know huge numbers of low-skilled migrants end up costing the economy. Maybe J.D. Vance is interested in that rather than just focusing on, as you say, foes like North Korea, Russia, China, etc., but looking inwards as well is important too.
Well, I think each sovereign democratic country has to make up its own mind. And if it's a problem of the European Union, that wouldn't surprise me. But if a country wants to allow these kinds of immigrants in, that's kind of up to them. It's just so long as other countries don't have to do the same. We call that democracy.
Yeah. OK, thank you very much indeed, John Bolton, assistant to the president, former assistant to the president for National Security Affairs. Well, there you go. A little bit of disagreement there, I would say.
So it's a fascinating conversation. I suppose the question is...
Because no one in this country has ever voted to have mass immigration. That's the thing. You say, oh, yeah, it's all right if the countries want to let in people. It's like, well, yes, actually, the people haven't been consulted, unfortunately, and when they have, they've said no thanks, but yet it happens.
Well, if you're in search of some migration yourself, perhaps migrating to find some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of those top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Whilst we're enjoying plenty of sunshine across the UK at the moment, it's a cool and blustery picture across the Eastern Med, and we have stormy conditions out towards the west as well. So parts of Portugal and Spain really seeing some very unsettled weather with thunderstorms, heavy rain and strong winds over the next few days. Fine across most of Italy, though, with some sunshine, and fairly decent across Greece and Turkey, but Cool and blustery in those strong northwesterly winds. Temperatures are set to increase, though, over the next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello and welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Through Wednesday, dry and sunny for many parts of the UK. Will be some stronger breezes down towards the southwest, but for all of us it's feeling warmer, and that's because low pressure to the southwest of the UK and higher pressure to the east is drawing up our winds from the south. So with that, the air is dry, there'll be plenty of sunshine, and our temperatures will be heading upwards for the coming few days. So for the vast majority, as I say, a lovely sunny afternoon on Wednesday. The main exception being down towards the southwest, where for parts of South Wales, southwest England into the Midlands, we'll see a bit more cloud. Just a small chance we could see 1 or 2 spots of rain from this, but the sunshine will be hazy at times, not necessarily always cloudy, with highs of 17 in London and temperatures elsewhere faring not too bad. So as we pick up the picture then this evening across Scotland, you can see a lovely end to the day, lots of sunshine around, but those temperatures already starting to slip down under those clear skies. Plenty of fine weather to end the day for Northern Ireland and indeed for Northern England, but you can see the temperatures just dropping as we head into 6 p.m. As we come further south across many parts of Wales, the Midlands, that's where we'll see a bit more in the way of cloud. As I say, 1 or 2 light spots of rain are possible. But that cloud will tend to melt away a little bit as we go through the night. So for many of us, it's a clear night once again. Temperatures not as cold across southern areas as they were this morning, but further north you can see the blue developing across Scotland, Northern Ireland and also Northern England. So quite a widespread frost. Temperatures in rural spots down to -5 or -6 as we start Thursday morning. But as I say, less in the way of frost further south. So a lovely sunny start to the day on Thursday for most places once again, and really it's set fair for all of us. A little bit, that sunshine a little bit hazy out towards the west through the day, but again, for many of us it's a fine picture. 1 or 2 showers may bubble up through the Midlands and East Anglia into the afternoon, but look at that, highs of 20 degrees, that's 68 Fahrenheit. Goodbye.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 3, and the documents relating to the visa of Prince Harry, they've just been released.
Yes, and we have royal correspondent Rich Palmer to tell us more. Richard, have we found out anything juicy?
Well, we haven't, unfortunately. They've released the documents and said that the whole thing was processed lawfully within the terms of the Department of Homeland Security's remit. But yes, they've redacted so much. I mean, they're just pages and pages of black where there should be print. And it just reminds me, I mean, I've been looking at documents relating to Prince Andrew's time as a trade envoy for the UK, and it's the same over here. You know, attitudes towards official secrecy are clearly very similar in the US under either Biden or Trump as they are over here.
Why do you think it is that we've got such little information out of what was a huge release? Reams and reams of paper, virtually none of it readable.
Well, I mean, that's a $64,000 question. I think the Americans want to protect themselves. I mean, my guess is that Harry probably was honest about his previous drug use if he was asked the question. I just don't think he would be that silly to have lied about it, because I think normally you are asked whether you have abused drugs in the past, and clearly there have been cases where British celebrities have had problems getting into the US because they've publicly admitted before that they've taken drugs.
Yes, there must be many, but what happens now?
Well, I suspect the Heritage Foundation, this right-wing think tank that launched the legal action, won't give up yet, and I'd be surprised if they didn't try to launch some further action.
Yes.
I mean, they feel very strongly that either Prince Harry lied or the Department of Homeland Security acted unlawfully in the way that they processed the visa.
Well, the case goes on, but Richard Palmer, thanks so much for joining us and talking us through this slightly uneventful release of documents.
Slightly uneventful. Perhaps we'll find more. I don't think the Heritage Foundation are going to drop this. Just a thought. But thank you very much for watching. This has been Good Afternoon Britain. Don't go anywhere, because coming up it is Martin Daubney with The Martin Daubney Show.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. After a fine, sunny and fairly warm day, as we head through tonight with clear skies, for many there will be a widespread frost, but less cold across the far south, which I'll come on to in a second. We've still got low pressure to the west, higher pressure to the east. That's drawing our air up from the south at the moment, so things are set to turn warmer over the coming few days. But overnight tonight, quite a widespread frost developing for Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland. Temperatures in our most rural spots down as low as -5. But with a bit more cloud further south, it won't be as frosty as it was on Wednesday morning. So you won't need your scraper first thing, I think, across these areas. Temperatures in towns and cities, 5s and 6s, a little bit colder than that in the countryside. But what does that mean for Thursday morning is that most of us start the day with plenty of sunshine. Taking a zoom in across the southern half of the UK first thing, there will be some patchy cloud around, but already through the morning those temperatures starting to respond to that fairly strong spring sunshine. A little bit hazier across Northern Ireland and parts of northwest England, but as we come back into Scotland, it is a cold and frosty start to the day here, but you'll be greeted with plenty of sparkling sunny skies. And then through the course of the day on Thursday, it's more of the same. For many of us, the sunshine prevails through the course of the day. That sunshine a little bit hazier out towards the west with just some high cirrus cloud filtering across the skies. And into the afternoon, we may just see 1 or 2 clouds bubbling up to give 1 or 2 very light showers, maybe just north of London. But temperature-wise, it's a warm day across the UK. Highs of 20 degrees, that's 68 Fahrenheit there in London, but mid-teens to high teens widely elsewhere. Through Thursday evening then, most of that cloud that develops will melt away, so once again it's a dry and a clear night. A bit more of a breeze developing down towards the southwest, and there are some signs of a change as we head towards the weekend. A few more in the way of showers and temperatures still on the fairly mild side. Goodbye.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you the chance to splash out this season with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash. Jet off on your dream holiday, treat yourself to something special, or just save it for a rainy day. You'll also receive 2 brand new designer watches and a Mulberry handbag, so you can really look the part this